In the pages of ancient history books, we often encounter a name filled with legend: Persia. It is the land of great kings, of enormous stone palaces, and of trade routes connecting the civilizations of the ancient world. Yet when we look at the modern map of the world today, that name seems to have vanished. In its place appears a more familiar country, Iran. What is fascinating is that these two names are not simply a replacement for one another. For many centuries, the Western world referred to this region as Persia, while the people who lived there had long called their homeland Iran, meaning the land of the Aryans, a concept that appears in the ancient traditions of the Iranian peoples. So what happened to the name Persia, and why in 1935 did King Reza Shah Pahlavi request that the international community officially use the name Iran in diplomatic relations? In tonight's episode on Stories for Sleep, we will slowly journey through 3,000 years of history, from the ancient tribes on the Iranian plateau to powerful empires such as that of Cyrus the Great, and finally to the moment when the name Iran formally appeared on the modern world map. If you enjoy history told gently, in a way that allows the mind to relax before sleep, remember to subscribe to the Stories for Sleep channel. Each subscription helps the channel continue bringing deeper journeys through history and the human mind during quiet evenings. And now, let us begin with the first question. Why does one land have two names, Persia and Iran? The mystery of two names, Persia and Iran. When we open the pages of ancient history, one name often appears with a sense of mystery and grandeur: Persia. It is the land of rulers known as the King of Kings, of the stone palaces at Persepolis, of caravans crossing deserts, and of trade routes connecting east and west. In the memory of the ancient world, Persia became almost a symbol, a civilization, vast, powerful, and enigmatic. Yet if we look at the map today, we will not find Persia anymore. Instead, we see a country called Iran. And here a quiet but profound question emerges: what happened to the name Persia? Did it disappear, or did it simply change shape in the long flow of history? The interesting truth is that these two names were never completely separate. For more than 3,000 years, they existed side by side like two mirrors, reflecting the same land from different angles. Ancient Greek writers, when they first encountered the empire of Eastern kings, referred to this land as Persia, based on the name of a southern region called Pars. From their perspective, Pars was the center of power, the homeland of rulers such as Cyrus the Great and Darius I. In the imagination of the Greeks, therefore, the entire vast empire became Persia. This name spread through Greek writings, then Roman history, and eventually into the broader historical memory of the Western world. But what many people do not realize is that while outsiders called the land Persia, the people who lived there used a different name: Iran. Long before Greek historians wrote their accounts, Iranian-speaking tribes referred to their homeland as Aryanum, meaning the land of the Arya, or the land of the noble people. Over time, Aryanum gradually evolved into Iran, and eventually Iran. This was not merely a geographical term. It was a way of understanding identity. When people called their homeland Iran, they were describing a cultural community, a family of peoples sharing language, memory, and origin. If we look more deeply, the two names Persia and Iran appear like two layers of the same story. Persia is the name given by the outside world. Iran is the name spoken from within. One name represents an external gaze. The other represents an inner voice. And their coexistence across thousands of years reveals something important. The identity of a civilization is never a single layer. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this idea invites an intriguing reflection. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In many ways, this insight applies to civilizations as well. There is always a visible layer of identity like the name Persia in Western historical texts. But there is also a deeper layer, like the name Iran preserved quietly in the memory of the people themselves. When we only see the surface, we believe we understand. But when we look deeper, we discover that every civilization carries something like a collective unconscious, a deeper memory that only those living within it truly feel. In the case of Iran, that memory never disappeared. Even when Persian empires collapsed, even when new dynasties ruled, even when languages and religions shifted, the idea of Iran continued to exist. It was like a river flowing underground, sometimes invisible yet always present. And in time that river would rise again to the surface. This story also reflects a deeper truth about human beings. In a symbolic sense, we each carry two names. One name is the one the world calls us, our roles, titles, and identities seen by society. The other name is known only within our deeper self, the memories and longings that live quietly in the soul. Jung called the discovery of this deeper identity individuation the long journey of becoming oneself. Just like the land known as Persia and Iran, human beings often travel a long path to reconcile the name given by the world with the name whispered by the soul. For 3,000 years, Persia and Iran coexisted this way. In Greek and Roman records, Persia was the name of a powerful empire. But in the traditions and language of the people themselves, Iran remained the name of home. One name lived in world history. The other lived in the memory of a nation. And sometimes the difference between these names was not a contradiction but a complement. Persia represented how the world saw the civilization, its palaces, armies, and kings. Iran represented how the people saw themselves a shared community with common origins, language, and memory. Only when both perspectives meet can we begin to understand the full story. And perhaps as we listen to this story in the gentle quiet of night, we notice something subtle. History is not only a sequence of events or names on maps. History is memory. The memory of a land. The memory of a people. The memory of millions who lived, dreamed, and built their lives upon the same vast plateau. 3,000 years ago, the Greeks called this land Persia. 3,000 years later, the world calls it Iran. But beneath all these changes, one thing remains unchanged: the flow of identity, the persistence of memory, the quiet continuity of a civilization. And perhaps this story reminds us of something gentle. Names may change, empires may fall, maps may be redrawn, but what lives deeply within the memory of a people, just like what lives deeply within the human soul, rarely disappears. It simply waits for the right moment to be spoken again. The geographic foundations of civilization on the Iranian plateau. When we move beyond the story of the two names Persia and Iran and look deeper into the land where this history began, a vast landscape slowly reveals itself. Before kings, before mighty empires, before wars recorded in chronicles, there was geography. At the heart of this geography lies the Iranian plateau. This is not a flat or easy land. The Iranian plateau stretches like a vast ocean of stone and sand across the center of Western Asia, surrounded by immense mountain ranges that form natural walls. To the west rise the rugged Zagros Mountains. To the north stand the snow-covered Alborz Mountains. To the east lie vast deserts such as Dasht-e Kavir and Dasht-e Lut, where scorching winds and endless sand create landscapes that feel almost otherworldly. From above, the plateau resembles a gigantic natural fortress. Mountains and deserts together protect its center from invading armies. This geography created an environment both harsh and full of possibility. In valleys between the mountains, melting snow forms small rivers and streams, creating green oases in an otherwise dry land. There, ancient humans learned to farm herd animals and build the earliest communities. Because mountains and deserts separated these valleys from one another, communities developed relatively independently. As a result, the Iranian plateau became home to many cultures, each with its own identity, like small stars scattered across the same sky. From very early times, this land became the cradle of ancient civilizations. One of the oldest was Elam, located in the southwest near the plains of Mesopotamia. Elam developed cities, writing systems, and administrative structures thousands of years before the Persian Empire appeared. Its ruins reveal a complex society, with temples, palaces, and trade networks linking neighboring civilizations. For centuries, Elam acted as a bridge between the river civilizations of Mesopotamia and the mountainous world of the Iranian plateau. Further east, archaeologists discovered another mysterious civilization, Jiroft. Artifacts found there, intricately carved stone vessels, ancient architecture, and symbols not yet fully deciphered, suggest that Jiroft once served as an early cultural center. The carvings show animals, plants, and mythical creatures, as if the people of that time were telling the story of the world through images carved in stone. What makes this particularly fascinating is that these civilizations existed long before the Persians entered history. It reminds us that the land later called Persia or Iran had a much deeper past than the empires we usually remember. Like a thick book, the first pages of the story were written long before famous characters appeared on the stage. Through Jung's perspective, we might see something similar to the layers of the human mind. Jung wrote, "The soil of the unconscious is full of archetypal images. Just as the human psyche holds ancient memories beneath consciousness, the Iranian plateau holds ancient civilizations beneath its soil. Each culture left traces behind: a buried city, a broken ceramic fragment, a carved statue. Over time, these layers accumulated, forming the foundation for later civilizations. When the Persians eventually built their empire, they did not begin from nothing. They stepped onto a land already carrying thousands of years of human experience. The geography of the plateau also shaped the character of the civilizations that grew there. Mountains and deserts served as natural defenses. Invading armies often had to cross harsh landscapes before reaching the plateau's center. This allowed local cultures to develop their identities without being easily erased by conquest. Yet at the same time, the mountain passes and desert routes turned the plateau into a crossroads of the ancient world. Merchants traveling from Mesopotamia, India, and Central Asia passed through these routes, carrying goods, ideas, and beliefs. Thus, the Iranian plateau became both a fortress and a meeting place of cultures. This balance between protection and exchange helped shape the richness and resilience of Iranian civilization. Through Jung's psychological lens, the image becomes almost symbolic. Human beings also possess mountains that protect us, boundaries and principles that preserve our identity. But we also have trade routes, relationships, and experiences that allow us to learn from the outside world. Maturity often emerges from the balance between these two forces. The Iranian plateau learned this balance early. Civilizations such as Elam and Jiroft grew quietly in the valleys between mountains like seeds planted in dry soil, patiently waiting for rain. Over centuries, some civilizations flourished, others faded, making space for new ones. Yet the land remained. The mountains still stood. The deserts still stretched under the sun. And the valleys continued to nurture life. Geography is not merely the background of history. It is a silent character within the story, shaping how people live, fight, trade, and dream. And as we listen to this story in the quiet of night, we might notice something gentle. Before empires, before famous names in history, there is always a deeper foundation. The foundation of land, water, and small human communities trying to understand the world around them. The Iranian plateau is one such foundation. Upon this land, the earliest civilizations slowly took root. And from these roots, many centuries later, a new civilization would rise. The one the world would call Persia, and its people would call Iran. And from this ancient geographic and cultural foundation begins the next chapter of our story. The arrival of the Iranian-speaking tribes who called themselves Arya, the Noble Ones, and who carried with them a new name for this land: the emergence of the ancient Iranian peoples. When the night of ancient history still covered much of the world around the 2nd millennium BCE, a slow yet profound movement was unfolding across the vast steppes of Central Asia and the northern edges of the Iranian plateau. Groups of nomadic peoples, speaking languages belonging to the Indo-European family, began to migrate gradually through valleys, mountain passes, and natural corridors shaped by geography over millions of years. They were not a conquering army advancing all at once. Instead, they were more like small streams, flowing quietly down from the mountains, slow, patient, and eventually merging into a new land. Among these migrating groups were the tribes that would later be known as the ancient Iranians. They carried with them their languages, traditions, and a distinct way of seeing the world. When they arrived on the vast Iranian plateau where civilizations such as Elam and Jiroft had already existed, they did not simply enter a new land. They entered into a long dialogue with the history and geography of that place. These tribes called themselves by a special name, Arya. In their ancient language, Arya did not mean race in the modern distorted sense. Instead, it simply meant noble people, or those who belong to our community. It was a word of identity and self-recognition. When they said we are Arya, they were describing a group united by language, traditions, and shared ancestral memory. From this name gradually emerged a way of referring to the land they inhabited, Aryanam, meaning the land of the Arya. Over time, like many ancient words, Aryanam changed in pronunciation and writing. It became Iran, and eventually, Iran, the name we know today. From the very beginning, therefore, the idea of Iran existed not as a modern nation-state, but as an idea of community, a world where the Arya lived, sharing culture and memory. Here, when we view this story through the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, something fascinating appears. Jung believed that every culture carries within it a collective unconscious, a deep layer of memory transmitted from generation to generation. Ancient symbols, words, and stories often contain traces of that memory. The word Arya can be understood in this way. It was not merely a name. It reflected how ancient people understood themselves within the vast world. By calling themselves noble people, they were affirming a spiritual value, a belief that they belonged to a community with order, dignity, and purpose. From that belief, a shared identity slowly began to grow. Like a small seed planted in soil, the idea of Iran began to germinate in the minds of those who lived upon the plateau. The emergence of the ancient Iranian peoples was not a single event, but a process spanning many centuries. These tribes moved with their herds, searching for new pastures and water sources. They carried the traditions of nomadic life, oral songs, rituals centered around fire and the sky, and stories of gods and heroes. Gradually, as they settled on the Iranian plateau, these traditions blended with the new environment. The mountains and deserts did not only shape their movements, they also shaped their worldview. Mountains became symbols of eternity, deserts became symbols of challenge, and the vast sky above became the sacred dome of the universe. Within this environment, an early Iranian culture began to form. Different tribes, the Medes, the Persians, and many others, shared linguistic roots and cultural elements. They revered fire as a symbol of purity. They told stories about cosmic balance between order and chaos, and they believed that humans had a role in maintaining that balance. These ideas would later become central to the ancient Iranian religion known as Zoroastrianism, where the struggle between light and darkness lies at the heart of the universe. Yet even before such teachings were formalized, they already existed within the myths and rituals of the early Iranian tribes. From a historical perspective, the arrival of these peoples laid the foundation for everything that followed. From those early nomadic tribes would eventually arise great kingdoms and empires. But from Jung's psychological perspective, the story carries a deeper meaning. Jung believed that the development of a civilization resembles the development of a person. At first, identity is vague and undefined. Gradually, it becomes clearer and more structured. In the case of ancient Iran, the word Arya represented one of the earliest signs of that identity. It was like the moment when a person first says, "This is who I am," and from that moment the history of a people begins to unfold. Even as these tribes migrated and changed through time, the idea of the land of the Arya continued to exist. It became like an invisible thread connecting generations. When the Medes and Persians later built their kingdoms, they carried with them the memory of this shared origin. And when great empires later rose on the Iranian plateau, the name Iran quietly endured in culture and tradition. As Jung once wrote, the collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution. In this case, that heritage belonged not only to humanity as a whole, but also to a particular land, a land the Arya called home. Looking back across thousands of years, the arrival of the ancient Iranian peoples stands as a pivotal moment in the history of the plateau. Yet what makes the story remarkable is not only the historical events, but the identity that slowly formed from them. From Aryanam to Iran and finally Iran, a name gradually took shape and endured across centuries. Empires would rise and fall, kings would come and go, but the idea of Iran, the land of the Arya, continued to live within the memory of its people. Here we can see a familiar pattern in history. The most significant things often begin very small. A word spoken in everyday life, a simple name used among tribes. Yet over time, those words become symbols, then foundations of national identity. Like a seed planted in soil, the word Aryanum slowly grew into a great tree of history, whose branches would include the Medes, Persians, Parthians, Sassanids, and many others. In Jung's thinking, such symbols possess special power because they connect past and present. They act as bridges between generations. When an Iranian today hears the name Iran, they are not merely hearing the name of a modern nation. They are hearing echoes of thousands of years of history. Within the collective unconscious lie images of ancient nomadic tribes, sacred fires glowing in the night, and a vast land where many cultures once met. And when we listen to this story in the quiet of the night, we can feel the slow rhythm of history. There is no sudden explosion, no single moment shaping everything. Instead, there are long steps across centuries, migrations, languages, passed down names, slowly changing form. Through all these transformations, one idea persisted. On this vast plateau lived a community of people who called themselves Arya, and their land was called Iran. From this foundation, the next chapters of history would unfold. The ancient Iranian tribes would gradually form alliances, kingdoms, and eventually empires. But everything began with something very simple. A group of people calling themselves Arya, and a land called Iran, the land of the noble ones. The Median Empire, the first Iranian power. As we continue, slowly along the river of history on the Iranian plateau, after the ancient Iranian tribes had settled and begun forming a shared identity, an important moment appears around the 7th century BCE. Across the lands between the Zagros Mountains and the eastern steppes, one of the Iranian tribes, the Medes, began to unite. Before this time, the tribes lived largely scattered. Each group had its own leader, each valley its own community, like small fires burning across the plateau. But as time passed, pressures from powerful neighboring empires forced them to change. To the west stood the Assyrian Empire, one of the most formidable military powers of the ancient world. Assyrian armies with chariots, archers, and strict discipline had subjugated many lands. Facing such forces, the Median tribes realized that if they remained divided, they would remain small communities before the great tides of history. And so they did something unusual. They formed an alliance. This alliance was more than a military strategy. It represented a shift in how ancient Iranian peoples saw themselves. From scattered tribes, they began to view themselves as part of a larger community. When the Median leaders united their strength, they created the first major political power on the Iranian plateau. Then, in 612 BCE, a symbolic event occurred. The Medes and their allies attacked and destroyed Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. The city that once stood as the center of ancient power collapsed. For many historians, this moment was like thunder echoing across the plateau. The first time Iranian peoples did not merely exist within history, but actively shaped it. From Jung's perspective, this could be seen as a moment when a collective identity emerged from the shadows. Jung once wrote that a nation's myths and symbols often reveal the awakening of a collective identity. For the ancient Iranians, the victory over Assyria may have been such a moment. After Assyria's fall, Median power expanded across the plateau. Their kingdom became a bridge between two worlds, the earlier age of scattered tribes and the later age of organized empires. Though the Medes did not yet build the fully developed administrative systems of later empires, they established a central authority, an important step toward Iranian statehood. Their capital was believed to be Ecbatana, a city protected by mountains. Ancient sources describe it as surrounded by multiple walls, each painted a different color. Though some details may be symbolic, they reflect how ancient people viewed Median power as a new center of order on the plateau. From Jung's psychological lens, the emergence of such collective power resembles the maturation of an individual identity. But like early stages of personal development, it would not remain in that form forever. The Median Empire was not the end of Iran's history, it was the beginning of a much longer journey. And indeed, only a few decades later, another dramatic shift occurred. Another Iranian tribe, the Persians, rose to prominence under the leadership of a young man named Cyrus the Great. Around 550 BCE, Cyrus defeated the last Median king and united both peoples under his rule. From that moment, power on the Iranian plateau transformed into something new, the Achaemenid Empire, known to the outside world as Persia, Cyrus the Great, and the birth of the Persian Empire. If the Median Empire was the first dawn of Iranian power, then Cyrus the Great was like the rising sun. Around 550 BCE, from the southern region of Pars, Cyrus emerged as a remarkable leader. He was not merely a king, but a figure remembered with unusual respect in historical records. Ancient writers often describe him as combining military strength with political wisdom. After defeating the Medes, Cyrus unified the Iranian peoples under one leadership. Importantly, he did not destroy Median institutions. Instead, he preserved many elements of their system and allowed local leaders to maintain authority within a new order. In doing so, Cyrus created something rare, an empire where many cultures could coexist within a single structure. Through Jung's lens, figures like Cyrus often appear in history as archetypal heroes emerging during times of transformation. Jung described such figures as symbols of a society's need for new order, and Cyrus fulfilled that role. From the Iranian plateau, he expanded his empire rapidly. He conquered Lydia in Anatolia and extended influence across Central Asia. But his most famous achievement came in 539 BCE, when he conquered Babylon. Babylon was not merely a city, it was a symbol of Mesopotamian civilization. Yet when Cyrus entered Babylon, the conquest was unusually peaceful. Soon after, he issued a proclamation recorded on the Cyrus cylinder, allowing exiled peoples to return to their homelands and restore their religions. Because of this policy, many scholars consider Cyrus one of the earliest rulers to practice religious tolerance. Within a short time, his empire stretched from Central Asia to the Mediterranean. It became the largest empire the world had yet seen. But its strength lay not only in territory, it lay in its ability to govern diversity. Instead of erasing cultural differences, Cyrus allowed different peoples to retain their identities within a shared political structure. In Jungian terms, this resembled integration, the harmonizing of diverse elements into a coherent whole. Yet there is another fascinating aspect to this story. Inside the empire, people often saw themselves as belonging to Iran, the land of the Arya. But Greek historians called the empire Persia because their contact was mainly with Persians from Pars. Thus, the name Persia spread through Western history. Meanwhile, the idea of Iran remained alive internally. Two names, two perspectives describing the same civilization. And so, as night settles quietly over this story, we might imagine the Iranian plateau during the age of Cyrus caravans, moving through deserts, roads, linking distant cities, and many languages echoing through marketplaces. At the center of this vast world stood a king who reshaped history not only through conquest, but through a vision of coexistence. And from that moment forward, the history of Iran and Persia would travel together through the centuries that followed. The wars with Greece and the birth of the Persia myth. As the Achaemenid Empire expanded westward, under rulers such as Darius I and later Xerxes I, they encountered not only new territories, but also a world with a very different spirit. World of the Greek city-states. Along the eastern shores of the Mediterranean cities, such as Athens, Sparta, and Corinth, existed as small but fiercely proud communities. They were not vast empires like the Achaemenid state, yet they possessed something else, a powerful sense of political freedom and civic identity. When these two worlds met, one a vast empire stretching thousands of kilometers, the other a constellation of determined city-states history, entered a tense era, later known as the Greco-Persian Wars. One of the most famous battles occurred in 490 BCE at the Battle of Marathon. Here, a relatively small force from Athens and its allies confronted the army of the Achaemenid Empire. Despite Persia's immense resources, the battle ended in a Greek victory. In Athenian memory, Marathon became a symbol of resilience, the story of a small community standing firm against an enormous power. Yet, from the perspective of the Achaemenid Empire, this battle was only one episode within a much larger campaign, not the center of their historical narrative. From the psychological perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, stories like Marathon reveal how communities create collective myths. Jung once wrote, "Myth is the natural and indispensable intermediate stage between unconscious and conscious cognition." Historical events are often retold in ways that reflect the deeper psychology of a society. For the Greeks, Marathon became a symbol of freedom resisting imperial power. And through stories like these, an image of Persia began to form within the Greek imagination. The conflicts did not end there. A few decades later, a much larger campaign was launched under Xerxes I. During this invasion, one of the most legendary battles in ancient history took place, the Battle of Thermopylae, at a narrow mountain pass between cliffs and sea. A small Spartangent-led force attempted to halt the advance of the Persian army. Although the Greeks ultimately lost the battle, their resistance became one of the most powerful symbols in Greek culture. Soon afterward came another decisive encounter, this time at sea. At the Battle of Salamis, the Greek fleet defeated the larger Persian navy. This victory shifted the course of the war and became one of the defining moments in Greek history. Later narratives often portrayed Salamis as a triumph of intelligence and strategy over raw power. But what truly made these battles remarkable was not simply their military outcomes. It was how they were remembered. Greek historians such as Herodotus recorded these events through a clear narrative lens, a struggle between Greek freedom and Persian imperial authority. In these accounts, the Achaemenid Empire was usually called Persia, a name derived from the region of Pars homeland of the Persian kings. Through Greek literature and historical writing, the name spread throughout the Western world. From a Jungian perspective, this illustrates how civilizations create symbolic opposites to understand themselves. In Greek imagination, Persia became a vast, exotic empire, sometimes portrayed as the opposite of Greek values. Yet such images often reveal more about the storyteller's psychology than about historical reality. Over time, stories of Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis spread across the Greek world and later the Roman world. Poets, historians, and playwrights retold them for generations. And in that process, something interesting happened. The name Persia became far more famous in Western history than the indigenous name Iran. For Greeks and Romans, the entire Achaemenid Empire became known simply as the Persian Empire. This reminds us of a familiar rule of history: how a civilization is remembered often depends on who tells the story. Most surviving ancient texts were written by Greek authors. Thus, their terminology, Persia, became the dominant name for centuries. Meanwhile, within the empire itself, Achaemenid rulers continued emphasizing their Iranian identity in inscriptions and royal traditions. Jung observed that humanity's collective memory forms through stories repeated across generations. The creation of myth is a collective process. The Greek-Persian Wars are a perfect example. They did not merely record battles. They created enduring images of two ancient worlds. And when we reflect on this story quietly at night, we see something deeply human. History is not only what happened, it is also the stories civilizations tell about themselves. From the battlefields of Greece, the name Persia echoed across western imagination. Yet deep within the memory of the land itself, the name Iran quietly endured, the patient persistent, like an underground river flowing through history. Alexander the Great and the Hellenistic era. At the end of the 4th century BCE, the Achaemenid Empire had existed for more than 2 centuries, stretching from Central Asia to the Mediterranean. Then a powerful wind began blowing from the west. The man who carried that wind was Alexander the Great. When Alexander began his campaign against the Persian Empire, few could have imagined that his journey would reshape the entire ancient world. Within a few years, his armies marched across Asia Minor, fought major battles, and eventually reached the heart of the Achaemenid realm. For many lands once ruled by Persian kings, Alexander's arrival was like a sudden storm, swift, powerful, and carrying a new order. The climax came in 330 BCE, when Alexander entered the empire's core territories. One of the most symbolic moments occurred at Persepolis. Persepolis, with its towering stone columns and elaborate reliefs depicting the peoples of the empire, had long symbolized Persian imperial power. But after the city fell, a dramatic event occurred. Persepolis was burned. Historians still debate why. Perhaps it was revenge for earlier Greek-Persian wars. Perhaps it was an impulsive act during celebration. Whatever the reason, the flames rising among the palaces became one of the most powerful images marking the fall of the Achaemenid Empire. Yet the fall of an empire rarely means the disappearance of a civilization. As Jung observed, the psyche does not erase the past, it transforms it. Though the political structure collapsed, Iranian culture did not vanish. It entered a new phase, existing beneath the surface of a different cultural layer. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, his empire quickly fragmented among his generals. One of the most important successor states in Iran became the Seleucid Empire, founded by Seleucus I Nicator. This empire spread Greek culture across the Middle East and Central Asia during the Hellenistic period. Greek-style cities appeared across the Iranian world. Theaters, temples, and marketplaces followed Hellenistic architecture. Greek became the language of administration and commerce in many places. At first glance, it might seem that Greek culture had replaced Iranian traditions, but reality was more complex. Beneath the Hellenistic surface, Iranian traditions continued. Local languages, religious practices, and memories of earlier dynasties persisted in daily life. Gradually, Greek and Iranian cultures began interacting, producing a unique, blended world. From Jung's perspective, this was a dialogue between two symbolic systems. When cultures meet, they rarely destroy each other instantly. Instead, they interact and transform. The Hellenistic Iranian world became a place where Greek gods stood beside Iranian traditions, and Greek-named cities existed within lands carrying ancient Iranian memory. Even the flames at Persepolis could not erase that memory. Civilizations with deep roots rarely vanish. They adapt, transform, and sometimes wait quietly beneath the surface until another moment of history calls them forth again. The Iranian revival under the Parthian Empire. After centuries under Hellenistic influence, the Iranian plateau began to shift once more. From the eastern steppes emerged a new power, the Parthian Empire. Originally a small group of Iranian nomadic tribes, the Parthians gradually challenged the weakening Seleucid rulers. Like many turning points in Iranian history, the change began quietly, but slowly it spread. The Parthians were part of the broader Iranian peoples of the steppe. They were masters of cavalry warfare, moving swiftly across deserts and grasslands. Their horse archers used a famous tactic known as the Parthian shot, feigning retreat and shooting arrows backward while riding away. Their power became unmistakable in Battle of Carrhae. where Parthian forces defeated a Roman army led by Marcus Licinius Crassus. For Rome, the defeat was shocking. For Parthia, it confirmed their status as a major world power. Yet, beyond military victories, Parthia represented something deeper: the revival of Iranian identity after centuries of Greek rule. Many Iranian traditions returned and flourished. The Parthian state acted as a bridge between the ancient Achaemenid world and later Iranian empires. And gradually the idea of an Iranian world, a cultural sphere uniting Iranian-speaking peoples, grew stronger. The Sassanid Empire and the official name Iran. In the early 3rd century CE, another transformation occurred. A new ruler from the region of Fars emerged, Ardashir I. In 224 CE, he defeated the last Parthian king and founded the Sasanian Empire. For the first time, royal inscriptions officially used the title King of Kings of Iran. The ancient name Iran, long preserved in tradition, now became a formal political identity. The Sassanid state also elevated Zoroastrianism as the official religion. Fire temples spread across the empire, and sacred flames burned continuously as symbols of purity and truth. The empire became one of the great powers of late antiquity, rivaling the Byzantine Empire. For centuries, Iran and Rome existed like two great planets in orbit around the same historical space. The Islamic conquest. By the early 7th century, the Sasanian state had grown weak after long wars with Byzantium. Meanwhile, a powerful new force arose in Arabia, Islam. Arab Muslim armies expanded rapidly. Within decades, they defeated Sasanian forces and conquered Iran. Yet again, the fall of an empire did not erase a civilization. Iranian language and traditions persisted. Over time, Persians gradually adopted Islam. The Persian language evolved into New Persian, written with the Arabic script, but retaining Iranian linguistic roots. Iranian culture soon became one of the intellectual and literary centers of the Islamic world. The revival of Iranian culture. In the centuries after the conquest, Persian culture experienced a remarkable revival. New Persian literature flourished under dynasties such as the Samanid dynasty. Persian became a major literary and scholarly language across much of the Islamic world. One of the greatest achievements of this era was the epic Shahnameh, written by the poet Ferdowsi in the 10th century. Through more than 50,000 verses, the Shahnameh retold the myths and history of ancient Iran. It preserved the memory of kings, heroes, and battles long after the old empires had vanished. As Jung once wrote, "Myths and legends are the dreams of a culture." In that sense, the Shahnameh became the collective dream of Iran, a bridge between ancient memory and the present. And so, across centuries of change, the name Iran continued to echo, quietly, patiently, like a flame that never truly goes out. Turkic and Mongol empires, yet Iranian culture endures. After the powerful revival of Iranian culture within the Islamic world, the history of this land entered a new phase, one in which political power often fell into the hands of dynasties that were not ethnically Iranian. Beginning in the 10th century, empires of Turkic and later Mongol origin gradually appeared across the Iranian plateau. Dynasties such as the Ghaznavid Empire, the Seljuk Empire, the Mongol conquests under Genghis Khan, and later the Timurid Empire, controlled vast regions of the Iranian world. At first glance, this might suggest that Iranian culture gradually faded beneath these new powers. But the strange and fascinating paradox of Iranian history is that the opposite often occurred. The conquerors who arrived from the Central Asian steppe, whether Turkic or Mongol, eventually became deeply attracted to the ancient culture of the lands they ruled. Rather than replacing it entirely, they began absorbing Persian culture. Persian became the language of literature, administration, and scholarship within many of these courts. Persian poets, scholars, and artists were invited into royal palaces to compose, teach, and advise. Over time, historians began describing this phenomenon as the Persianate world. For centuries, from Anatolia to Central Asia, Persian functioned as one of the most influential cultural languages of the region. Turkic and Mongol dynasties, even those that had once arrived as conquerors, came to see themselves as heirs to the Iranian cultural tradition. Through the lens of Carl Gustav Jung, something intriguing appears here. Jung once wrote, "The most powerful ideas in history are rooted in archetypes. Deep cultural symbols such as the image of the ideal king, the cosmic order of the universe, or the hero defending the land often carry a power that transcends ethnic boundaries. Ancient Iranian culture possessed such powerful symbolic systems that even foreign conquerors found themselves drawn into them. A clear example can be seen during the Seljuk period. The Seljuks originated as Turkic nomadic tribes from Central Asia. During the 11th century, they swept into Iran and the Middle East, conquering enormous territories. Yet once they established their rule, they quickly realized that managing such a vast empire required the administrative expertise of Iranian scholars and officials. Thus, the Seljuk court relied heavily on Persian bureaucrats. One of the most famous figures was Nizam al-Mulk, who built an impressive system of governance and education. Under his influence, schools, libraries, and intellectual centers flourished, places where Persian and Arabic together became languages of knowledge. In Seljuk palaces, Persian poets continued producing brilliant works. Ancient Iranian legends were still retold, and cultural traditions remained vibrant. This demonstrates something remarkable. Iranian culture did not depend entirely on Iranians holding political power. Instead, it functioned like a cultural gravitational force, attracting even outsiders who had arrived as conquerors. In the 13th century, another wave arrived, this time the Mongols. Under Genghis Khan's armies, Central Asia and Iran experienced devastating invasions. Many great cities were destroyed. This period was among the most difficult in Iranian history. Yet even after this destruction, the same surprising pattern appeared once again. The Mongol rulers eventually began adopting Persian culture. Within the Mongol state in Iran, particularly the Ilkhanate, Persian gradually became the language of administration and culture. These rulers sponsored Persian historians, architects, artists, and scholars. In time, the region experienced another flourishing of art and learning. The fusion of Turkic-Mongol political power with Iranian culture reached a new height under the Timurid Empire in the 14th and 15th centuries. Its founder, Timur, came from a Central Asian nomadic background, yet his descendants became some of the greatest patrons of Persian culture. Cities such as Samarkand and Herat blossomed into brilliant centers of art and scholarship. Architecture, miniature painting, poetry, and science all flourished. Persian remained the central language of literature and intellectual life. Timurid courts increasingly saw themselves not simply as conquerors, but as successors to the Iranian civilizational tradition. This reveals something extraordinary about Iranian culture. Its strength did not lie solely within borders or armies. It lived within language, poetry, stories, and imagination. According to Jung's ideas about the collective unconscious, cultural symbols and memories can endure across centuries. Ancient Iranian legends, stories of kings, heroes, and epic struggles continued living in the minds of generations even when political power changed hands. Thus, history presents us with a fascinating paradox. Turkic and Mongol empires conquered Iran through military power, yet over time they themselves were conquered by Iranian culture. Persian language, literature, and tradition became part of their own identity. And through the long river of history, this reminds us of something profound. The true strength of a civilization may lie not in armies or borders, but in its ability to inspire those who come after it. Iranian culture achieved exactly that, not only among Iranians, but even among those who once arrived as conquerors. The Safavid dynasty, the rebirth of the Iranian state after centuries in which Iran had been ruled by dynasties of Turkic or Mongol origin. The early 16th century marked a turning point. In 1501, a young leader named Shah Ismail emerged and established the Safavid dynasty. With his victory, he did more than found a new ruling house. He re-established a unified Iranian state after centuries of fragmented authority. Shah Ismail originally came from a Sufi spiritual lineage. To many followers, he was not merely a political leader, but a sacred figure. His loyal supporters, known as the Qizilbash, formed a powerful military force that helped him conquer large territories. When he captured Tabriz, he proclaimed himself Shah of Iran. This moment carried deep historical significance. After centuries of foreign origin dynasties, Iran was once again united under a dynasty that claimed to be heir to the ancient Iranian tradition. Memories of earlier empires such as the Achaemenid Empire and the Sasanian Empire seemed to echo in collective memory. One of Shah Ismail's most significant decisions was declaring Shia Islam the official religion of Iran. Before the Safavids, much of the Islamic world, including many Iranian regions, followed Sunni Islam. The Safavids deliberately chose a different path. By establishing Shia Islam as the state religion, they created a distinct identity that separated Iran from neighboring powers, such as the Ottoman Empire. Shia scholars were invited to teach and establish religious centers throughout the country. Over generations, Shia traditions blended with older Iranian cultural elements, producing a unique identity. Iran became both an Islamic nation and the heir to ancient Persian civilization. During the Safavid era, art, architecture, and culture flourished. Cities such as Isfahan became magnificent centers of architecture and craftsmanship. Grand squares, turquoise-domed mosques, and bustling bazaars created a vibrant image of Iran. Persian literature and artistic traditions continued to thrive. Epic stories from the Shahnameh were still recited and remembered. And gradually, multiple elements of Iranian identity, ancient Persian history, Islamic belief, and Shia tradition merged into a new synthesis. Many defining features of modern Iran trace their origins to this Safavid transformation. The Qajar era and pressure from Europe. In the 19th century, Iran again faced a dramatic turning point. After the decline of Safavid power, a new ruling house emerged, the Qajar dynasty. Iran remained a historic kingdom, but the world around it had changed. Instead of confronting ancient rivals such as Byzantium or Central Asian states, Iran now faced expanding European empires. To the north stood the Russian Empire. To the south and east stood the British Empire. Caught between these forces, Iran became part of a geopolitical struggle known as the Great Game. Through wars and treaties, Iran lost territories in the Caucasus to Russia. Foreign economic concessions also gave European companies influence over major industries. Yet these pressures sparked new political thought within Iranian society. Intellectuals began asking a profound question: who are we in this new modern world? These debates eventually led to the Persian constitutional revolution, which demanded a constitution and parliament. The movement marked the beginning of modern Iranian political consciousness. Reza Shah and the name Iran in 1935 inches. The early said 20th century Iran entered another transformative moment under Reza Shah Pahlavi. He launched sweeping modernization reforms, building infrastructure, reorganizing the military, and strengthening the central state. But one of his most symbolic decisions occurred in 1935. He formally requested that the international community stop using the name Persia and instead refer to the country as Iran. Persia, widely known in the West, originated from the region of Pars, but Iran derived from the ancient word Aryanum, meaning land of the Aryans. For Iranians, this name connected directly to a deeper historical identity. From Jung's symbolic perspective, names carry powerful meaning. When the name Iran returned to global maps, it was like an ancient memory awakening after centuries of dormancy. Though the name Iran became official internationally, the word Persia never fully disappeared. Expressions like Persian carpets, Persian poetry, and Persian art remain part of global culture. Thus, two historical layers of identity continue to coexist. Yet from 1935 onward, the world gradually adopted the name Iran. And perhaps what truly happened in that moment was not simply a diplomatic change. It was a civilization looking back across thousands of years and choosing once again to call itself by the name it had carried in memory all along. Persia does not disappear. When the world officially began using the name Iran instead of Persia in diplomacy after 1935, many people might have thought that the name Persia would gradually disappear from history. But the reality is far more subtle. Persia did not truly vanish. It simply changed its place within the memory of the world. If Iran became the name of the modern nation, then Persia continued to live on in the realms of culture, art, and the imagination of humanity. Even today, when people speak of the famous handmade carpets from this land, they still call them Persian carpets. These carpets are not merely decorative objects. They are like stories woven with wool and color. Every pattern, every line, carries ancient symbols, from images of paradise gardens to mythical animals to delicate geometric designs. In the world of literature, the phrase Persian poetry is still used to describe a poetic tradition that stretches across thousands of years. Poets such as Hafez Rumi and Ferdowsi are still remembered as icons of Persian poetry. Here, the name Persia is not simply a geographical label. It evokes a cultural space where poems, stories, and images have been preserved across centuries. If we look through the lens of Carl Gustav Jung, this is not surprising. Jung once wrote, "The symbol is the living body of meaning." A powerful symbol such as the name Persia does not disappear simply because of an administrative decision. It continues to exist wherever the collective memory of humanity is preserved in art, in literature, and in the symbolic objects of culture. Another example showing how Persia still lives in the world's memory is the name Persian Gulf. This sea has carried that name for centuries, from the maps of ancient Greek geographers to modern atlases. The name Persian Gulf reminds us of a time when Persian empires controlled much of this region, and it continues to be widely used in history and geography. Interestingly, in this case, Persia is not only a memory of the past, it becomes a historical symbol, a reminder that this land once stood at the center of many ancient civilizations. Trade routes once crossed these waters. Merchant ships sailed across them. Ideas, goods, and stories traveled from east to west. In the modern world, Iran may be the official name of the nation. But when people speak about the ancient traditions of this region, the name Persia is often used to evoke an older, almost mythical era. It becomes a doorway into the past, leading the imagination back to ancient empires, stone palaces, and gardens, designed as images of paradise. Jung once said, "The past is not dead, it lives on in the unconscious." Within the collective psychology of humanity, symbols of the past never completely disappear. They continue to exist in images, stories, and names passed from generation to generation. Persia, in this sense, has become part of the cultural memory of the world. So when we look at the modern map, we see a country called Iran. But when we enter the worlds of art, poetry, and history, we still encounter the name Persia in many places. The two names do not truly compete with one another. They are like two different layers of the same story. Iran represents the present, a modern nation with politics, society, and the challenges of the contemporary world. Persia, by contrast, represents the long memory of history, an ancient civilization that left a deep imprint on human culture. In Jungian psychology, a human being often carries many layers of identity: the layer of the present, the layer of memory, and deeper layers of symbolic meaning. Jung once wrote, "The deeper layers of the psyche hold the memory of the past." If we apply this idea to the history of a nation, we can see that Iran also carries many such layers. Iran is the country that exists on the map today. But Persia is the ancient memory that continues to live in art, in poetry, and in the imagination of the world. In some way, the two names are like two voices of the same civilization. And perhaps that is what makes this story so remarkable. Persia did not disappear when Iran appeared. It simply moved deeper into the layers of memory, where ancient symbols continue to live. When we listen to this story, in the quiet of the night, we might imagine history as a long river. On the surface, the water always flows forward, just as the name Iran represents the present. But beneath the surface, deeper currents still carry the traces of older streams. Persia is one of those currents, an ancient memory quietly flowing beneath the surface, reminding us that the history of this land is far longer than any single name could contain. When we look back at the entire journey we have just explored, from the ancient tribes of the vast plateau to great empires, conquests, periods of decline and moments of renewal, we begin to realize something. The history of Iran is not a simple straight line. It is more like a long river, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, yet never truly stopping. From the distant days when ancient Iranian tribes called themselves Arya, to the great dynasties like the Achaemenid Empire, to the transformations of the Islamic era, the Turkic and Mongol empires, and finally the modern state of Iran, every empire, age has left a layer of memory within this land. These layers do not erase one another. They accumulate like the rings within the trunk of an ancient tree. Perhaps that is why the story of Persia and Iran is not simply about a name. It is about identity, about how a civilization looks back at itself after thousands of years of change. In the thinking of Carl Jung, the history of a people can resemble the psychology of a person. Each individual carries memories of childhood experiences of youth and insights of adulthood. All these layers exist at the same time, shaping who we are. Jung once wrote a famous line: "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." If we apply this idea to history, we might say that when a nation looks back into its past, it is not merely examining events, it is looking into the deepest parts of its own identity. Today, Iran is a modern nation, with crowded cities, highways, and the complex political stories of the modern world. Yet somewhere deep within its culture still lives the memory of Persia, the memory of ancient Persian gardens, the poetry of Hafez, and the legendary pages of the Shahnameh. And perhaps this is what makes the history of this land so remarkable. A country may change its name, dynasties may rise and fall, but the deepest stories of a civilization continue to live. If we listen to this story in the quiet of the night, we might imagine the Iranian plateau stretching beneath a sky filled with stars. Desert winds move across ancient cities past the ruins of Persepolis, through gardens and temples that have witnessed thousands of years. History has flowed across that land for millennia, yet the river of culture continues. And perhaps in a world that is always changing, this offers a gentle reminder. Every civilization is like a long dream of humanity, a dream in which each generation lives only for a small moment. And now, as our story slowly comes to an end, it may also be time for your mind to slow down. Let the images of history drift softly through your imagination. Caravans crossing the desert stone, palaces beneath the ancient sun, poets writing by the light of oil lamps thousands of years ago. All of those stories still exist somewhere within the memory of the world, like distant stars quietly shining in the night sky. And if these slow stories help your mind relax, helping you drift gently towards sleep, remember that many more journeys through history still await. If you would like to continue listening to quiet stories about history, the mind, and the mysteries of the world, you can subscribe to the Stories for Sleep channel so you don't miss the next videos. And now, let your shoulders relax, take a slow breath, and allow your thoughts to drift into the stillness of the night. May you have a deep and peaceful sleep.